right, everybody, welcome to The Unraveler. This is my first show. I'm very excited to be here today. As you can imagine, and from if you were here to watch the video, which I don't know that we actually have any visitors yet, but hopefully you'll be joining in. I think we may have three now. I'm not sure. So, learning how this works, this is a test case for me, but I can't think of someone better to deal with than Tristan Gabriel. So, very excited to have you on, Tristan. Appreciate all your time helping me get this working and tested today. So I guess we're just going to shoot the breeze for a couple of seconds. Hopefully, we get some viewers. But as you know, if you are watching, I shoot from the hip. I don't spend a lot of time trying to stroke the ego, as you can tell from the video. I see no point in that. From the video, I guess this is a time to just say it because people will be watching this afterwards. One of the things that uh, we get accused of regularly as atheists, even though I don't know that you would classify yourself as an atheist yet, although I think you would say you're an anti-theist, right?
Correct.
So we would share that. So I think there's enough evidence that religion is harmful. And so when Christianity has said to me, or Christians that I dialogue with, oh, it's so horrible that you say that we're brainwashed. I think that's a terrible thing to say. I can't believe you would say that, or whatever. And I even have some that have escaped that still think that that's a negative connotation. But it's interesting because as Christians, they have no problem going around telling people they're sinners, maggots, worms, because these are terms the Bible used, right? So
Right.
if you don't care about the Bible and you're just living your own life anyway, and Christianity is just a fun thing you do, I mean, I guess, are you really a Christian? Is that really, you know, I saw your video the other day, which was awesome about explaining that, goes the sword cuts both ways, right? Um,
Yeah.
so we get accused of that. I get accused of that, and yet they'll call people sinners. And the reason that you need a savior is because you supposedly have a problem called sin. Now, of course, we don't believe sin exists anymore. We were thought brainwashed into thinking it did. So it offered a fake solution to a fake problem. I'm here saying, hey, just like you present a problem that you therefore have a solution for, I'm presenting a problem too, so that you can actually get the solution. But my problem's real. The problem I'm presenting is real. You are actually stuck in a matrix that you don't realize you're in, believing that you're a sinner worthy of nothing, no good without Jesus, and so therefore you need a savior. So I have not only the problem that I'm presenting, which is a real problem, but I'm offering the solution to your problem. And unlike in Christianity, when you are a non-Christian, you're a sinner, going to go to hell in some cases, or just deserving of God's eternal punishment, whatever that looks like. Uh, but then after you come to faith, supposedly your sins are forgiven, but you're still a sinner. You're still a mag. You're still the same. You're still considered a sinner saved by grace. So that void issue never goes away. You always have that guilt, shame, and fear, even if you've minimized it in some way through your theology. But it's always there if you're a consistent sinner. You're just lucky to have Jesus, I suppose, is the idea. But what I'm proposing is if we get rid of your real problem, the brainwashing that makes you think all of these things, you no longer are a Christian. You no longer are brainwashed. It's gone. And then you can live free. Now, is that to say that there might be other elements of brainwashing in my life that I don't know I have? Sure. But once you're out of one and you can look back in, you can say, oh, I definitely was brainwashed then. And that's what I mean. I'm not telling people that they're stupid or ignorant or don't have the ability to reason or think. It's just when you're brainwashed, you didn't make the choice. The choice was made for you. So I've just blabbed a lot. I've given you a fire hose of stuff for Tristan to respond to. But I want to hear all your thoughts on that, and I'm sure the world does too, much more than hearing me talk.
Well, thanks again, Alan, for having me on. Even though I'm no longer a Christian, I still have a passion for humanity, the future generations, and truth matters. And so I often ask Christians or any religious faith, if truth were to lead you out of your religious faith, would you side with the truth or would you still hold on to faith? And I believe that those who are seeking truth are going to allow the chips to fall wherever they fall. But yes, Alan, we do get accused of never being saved, that we were never really sincere. God, in his foreknowledge, chose us when we were little babies to be cursed. And no matter what we could do, we could never have sincerity when it comes to pursuing Christianity and the tenets of Christianity, all of the belief systems, all of our pursuits in Bible theology. We have some sort of ill motive. But last I checked, the Bible says that it's only Jesus who knows the heart. He's the one who searches the heart. So I guess these Christians must think they're Jesus if they know our motives and they know our hearts and our pursuits of this. And yeah, I'm somebody who's sincere, just like you, Alan. We give our whole life to this. Blood, sweat, and tears. I was born and raised in this, and went to Bible college, went to seminary. There are people who've written books. People who've given their entire life, and it's those who are studious. I was talking to Jen Fishburne just yesterday, as a matter of fact. She talked about 80% of Christians hardly ever read the Bible from front to cover, and there's only about 20% of those who actually take this serious. And I would absolutely agree. But what's amazing, Alan, is you and we were actually part of the 1%ers because we were full preterists. And we know that if all the Christians that we see in the world, the population of full preterists, it's going to accumulate less than 1%. And so, it was, and I'm not trying to digress into another topic, but, it was full preterism, that eschatological framework that essentially started to lead me out. And if it wasn't for that doctrine of full preterism, I would still be a prisoner of biblical literature. I would still be stuck in Christianity in the waiting club, waiting for Christ to return, even though it's been 2,000 years. So, I'm somebody who currently holds to failed prophecy. Now, I will side with atheism before any type of theistic framework. I do give a small chance that there could be some sort of mind out there. There could be some sort of simulation. There could be something greater than us out there. Could be. But that's not something I'm going to live my life and squander my life by. And, if we die, Alan, and let's say we go back to non existent, there is no afterlife, like Epicurus suggested thousands of years ago. That would enrich this life. It would make this life much more valuable. The present would make it much more valuable because it is all that we have. And so that my goal and my motive of still discussing religion, which, I'm sure you've gotten as well. Well, if you no longer believe in the Bible, why are you even talking about it? If you're no longer a Christian, why are you so deeply involved in it? And I tell them, you see, that's the difference between you and I, because even though I no longer believe in the Bible, I still love this Bible theology business, even though I believe it doesn't apply to me. See, for you, speak for yourself. If you saw that the Bible didn't apply to you, you'd be out living your life and not caring about the future generations and have them stuck in religion. You see, so those who have exited Christianity, yet they have a mission to help others get out of Christianity, that bondage of religion, that speaks volumes of their dedication. That speaks volumes of their motives. So I have the utmost respect for you, Alan, and those like us, who've given our lives over to this. And I'm just glad to be alive, and I'm glad to be a part of a movement where we're seeing a mass exodus of humans leaving religion. Not just Christianity, but Islam, and all other religions. And I'm thankful for technology for that. I'm thankful for social media, the ability to, connect and share thoughts and ideas. So, I'm glad to be a part of the human race. And, I care for the future of humanity. And, if I could just win that one person, if everything that you and I do, if we could just reach just one person, to me, that'll be worth it all. So thank you so very much.
Well, for sure. You sound like a Christian, man. It's crazy.
I know.
But it's funny because I mean, I do very much still have the same passion that I did as a Christian. It's just it's reversed now because now I see things that I didn't see before. So let's talk about that for a moment. We get accused a lot of that. You were never really a Christian, right? It's such a scapegoat. It's an easy way out to just excuse what we're saying. Oh, you were just never, they went out from us because they were never of us, and that's, it is what it is, and that's what they're going to think. And I probably would have thought that way too when I was a Christian about people that left the faith because I was Reformed. I was a Calvinist, so my view would have been, oh, I guess they just never believed. So, so that's the only way you can really think when the brainwashing is still intact, and I get that. But let's talk about another question that I get a lot, and it's, why do you care? What difference does it make? Leave us Christians alone. Why are you trying to destroy our faith? That's an important question for me, and it's one that I've tried to answer. And now I'm excited about my channel because I can answer verbally week after week after week, because it's so hard sometimes to communicate through typing. I'm learning just now about how important, well, not, but more than ever, I'm learning now how important face-to-face communication is, or at least audio, because you hear tone in the voice and intonation, and it just changes from what you're reading. Which, just for a second, I'm going to take a commercial break here and just pause and say, hey, starting next Sunday, March 2nd at 6:30 p.m., which is going to be the regular time for this show, I'm going to be going live with my first official guest, um, William Vincent. And I'm super excited about this because William, if anybody's followed us online, you'd swear we hate each other. And maybe before we talked on the phone, we might have. But then we talked, and it was like, he's the coolest guy ever. I was like, I really was shocked. I was like, this is nothing the way I read in the text, right? The written word just doesn't quite do the job until you talk to the person. It was just amazing. So I'm excited for you all to meet the William that I know now. But I want to encourage everybody to grab his book, 10 Reasons, or the 10 Myths of Atheism. It's on Amazon. It's a book that you should read alongside of my book, How to Kill God the Easy Way. Read them both, because we're going to be discussing those books over a period of weeks and just dialogue. So you're going to probably want to get the material in your head and just kind of be a part of the conversation, because we're going to be taking questions and conversation with you and stuff like that as well. But back to my point, William is an example here for me to say, the written word is probably the worst way to communicate stuff about yourself and for people to get to know you. If that's the only form of communication you're going to use, then I guess you have to. But if you're God and you have the ability to communicate any other freaking way, with all your wisdom, you're going to choose the written word. That does not add up to me, because you can't understand what he's communicating. You can't get his personality, right? So I mean, I find that to be problematic right out the gate.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
but anyway, I think I took a butterfly trail. But back to what we were talking about. So what are the reasons why we're so passionate about this? And I have some of my own, but before I share them, I want to give it over to you so we can just have a dialogue instead of me just rambling forever.
Oh, yeah, everything you're saying, I mean, I totally concur. I mean, we get those questions all the time. That we were never saved. You'd have to curse us when we were a baby. Especially those born and raised in church. Like Christopher Hitchens stated, religion makes morally normal people do and say disgusting and wicked things. And to me, I just had a dialogue with Mike Sullivan, who is a constituent of Don Preston. And him and I were going back and forth in the DMs, and he had told me that. He goes, "You were never saved." He used that verse of scripture. You left us. You departed from us because you were never one of us. What's amazing, Alan, is that's what the 50,000 denominations of Christianity, they use that verse as well. When somebody leaves one denomination and goes to another denomination, oh, they use that one as well. If a Catholic becomes a Protestant or a Protestant becomes a Catholic, they use that one as well. And I just think it's namely just the lack of dedication to the Bible that gets people to just make such.
Yeah, I think we're losing you, Tristan, a little bit. I'm not sure how your signal is. I have my 5 bars. Can you
Sure
hear me?
itself. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear
Okay.
me?
I no, we lost you for I guess about 20 seconds there.
Oh,
Um,
really? Oh, okay.
yeah, and I still have a frozen screen on your face here. Um, Interesting. Um,
Hmm. Yeah, your face is frozen too on my end.
huh. Well, this is fun.
Oh, goodness gracious. Let me see. Am I still frozen?
You are. You're still frozen.
Okay.
Can you hop out and come back in and let's see what
Yeah,
happens?
I'll hop out and come back in. Absolutely.
All right.
Yep.
All right. So we're just going to give Tristan a moment here to do that. Hopefully I can get his face off my screen first. So when he comes back in, I can see a fresh Tristan. Maybe it is me. Oh no, there he goes. Okay. So hopefully it's not me. We're seeing these issues. Welcome back.
Yes.
I think we're good now. So hopefully that
Okay.
it's not. Hopefully it doesn't happen again. Okay. Anyway, can you rewind like 30 seconds if you can?
Yes, yes. What I was saying was, in a brief synopsis, we often get that accusation, that passage where it says they left us because they were never part of us. Every denomination within Christianity, Catholic or Protestant, they use that when somebody transfers over to a different denomination. It's like if you're a Baptist, you become a Pentecostal, or if you're Episcopalian, you transfer over to become a Presbyterian. Oh, they left us because you were not among us. And, it's that incoherence that should raise red flags. Everybody is using this verse, just like other passages of scripture, like, obey your masters, or, don't, forsake not the assemblies of yourselves. Pretty much don't question authority because they have rule over your souls. It's like every denomination uses this. And so at the end of the day, it's that incoherence that should raise red flags. But like I stated before, Mark Twain is the one who had stated, "It's not what I don't know about the Bible that troubles me. It's what I do know about the Bible
Right.
that troubles me." And I think that those who make such accusations have never really studied the Bible, number one, thoroughly. Number two, they haven't studied other literatures. They haven't really studied science very much. They haven't studied philosophy. And those two fields of academia, I would say the majority of Christians stay away from. Even Christian ministers, Alan, those who teach in seminaries. If you talk to them about philosophy, it's not really a thing with them. If you talk to them about science, a lot of times, there was once upon a time when science was known as an enemy of Christianity, as we know. But there's no way in our 21st century that we could downplay science or philosophy. And I think that those two fields, in my humble opinion, do have superiority over religious faith. So, we're just some people. We're people who we know what we're talking about. We're not rookies in this. We're veterans in this. And what can we say? It's a never-ending story. You're going to get accused. You just got to have thick skin. But at the end of the day, there are those who I believe can see the errors in religion, see the errors in the Bible, just reading the Bible itself. And I believe that in our age, we do have a mass exodus of people leaving religion. And so, what can I say? I'm just glad to be a part of it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm glad I'm on this side right now. This is wonderful. Wish that I would have been on this side 20 years ago, but you do what you got to do. You get where you
Yeah.
can. Funny you were making a parallel that when you leave each denomination, they say the same thing. Oh, they were not of us. A lot of times, not everybody will, but you do hear that, right? So it triggered me. I was like, oh man, you're that's a fascinating thought too, because back to the term brainwashing again that I use. It's funny that I get accused of being harsh, or that people don't like to be called that. Particularly, like I know Ward Fenley has gone after me for that, which is fine. I mean, for whatever reason he's having a hard time with it, and that's okay. I'm not asking anybody to have a good time with it. People don't like you calling them sinners either. But you got to face reality. But the point I'm making is, it's funny that you may have remembered this when we became full preterists, but I remember specifically dialoguing with Ward and having the conversation where both of us agreed that when we left futurism, the only reason we were in futurism is because what? We were brainwashed and we escaped into preterism. That was our view. So for some reason, it's okay to use it there, but not
Right.
okay for me to use it here. Right? I mean, it just seems like there's constant hypocrisy like that, and it's very, very frustrating. But back to reasons then, why do we care? What's it matter? Why are we so concerned about helping people escape the faith? And I kind of want to talk about some of those reasons. Like what is driving us? Like we got out, we see things on the inside, and like you just said, the Mark Twain quote, what are the things we do see that are driving us? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, as far as what's driving us to still continue, or what's driving us out of Christianity.
No, well, I mean, I suppose in some ways it'd be the same. But I mean, because a lot of people probably already heard our testimonies of getting out of Christianity, so we don't necessarily need to go there. There's plenty of videos out there that they can watch those. We don't need to repeat that here. I'm talking about what are reasons we see that are concerning enough for us about Christianity and religion, I suppose in general, to drive us passionately evangelistically
Yeah.
go get these people and try to remove the brainwashing. Why am I so concerned about that? Why does it matter to me? Why do I keep using that term and pounding it? Once again, it's because I want you to see you have a problem. I need you to hear it, and then once you acknowledge you have a problem, you can have the solution. Um, but be that as it may, what is driving me? What is driving you? I'll give you one example, and then and hopefully you can piggyback off of that. Um, I said at the beginning, I think Christianity demoralizes people. It takes away their value. It diminishes their value. It makes them worthless nobodies. And if you actually follow that theology and care about the Bible the way you and I did, as you were just discussing, and you're the kind of Christian that is genuinely reading the text and saying, holy cow, I really am a no good, nothing sinner without Jesus. It's sad that when you take away Jesus, you find yourself being literally worthless. And that's a sad that to me that's a
Yeah.
sad commentary. And I don't like that at all, especially now that I don't believe that, there's a sin problem and a Jesus solution or any of that. So that's one thing that drives me is seeing how much Christianity demoralizes people, at least the ones that, care what the text teaches. So that's one example for me. I can talk about others, but I want you to have a chance
Oh,
of.
yes. I mean, we know life decisions are made based upon someone's Christian faith, who they marry, which oftentimes we hear that's one of the most important decisions of your life. Your second most important decision in your life, who you're going to marry. So that's key. I deal with students all the time who are Christians, Alan, and, they, ask me questions about their future. And, people even ask me, should I go to Bible college? I have students that ask me, and I tell them, look, if you go to Bible college, you're going to have a great time, but it's not going to do anything for your life financially. I'll tell you that much. And so if you ask me, I'm going to say no, because you don't need Bible college. The Bible is not that difficult. It's a seventh grade reading level.
Dude, do you
It's
know
good.
I sorry, I got to come up right
Go
there.
ahead. Go ahead.
I got accused of my Christian life as a pastor was nothing more than a money making venture for me. I was like, money making? Where do you see all this money?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Silver and gold have I none, but such as I have give I thee. It's like, yeah, silver and gold. I mean, and I remember being in Bible college and they will tell us that, hey, if you're in this for the money, you're in the wrong business. And that's absolutely true. Just look at the statistics. Theology and philosophy are one of the lowest pay rate degrees. And I have a master's degree in this. So, it's kind of like, but I have no regrets, Alan. I wouldn't go back and change my life. I'm thankful for the experiences that I've had. I've met great people. I've had some, fun times, but there's nothing you can do to rewind the clock. You just have to make the best here and now. And that's one of my driving forces. So, when students come to me and they ask me questions about their faith and the Bible and things like that, I'm respectful. I'm not out to hurt their feelings, but at the same time, we have to let the truth be the truth. And if it's a brute fact, I'm very candid with them. I tell them, look, I gave my whole life over to this, and if you were to ask me, I will tell you that you will live a joyful, fulfilled life if you did not have the Bible paradigm applied to your life. If you did not believe that you're cursed because of a man ate a piece of fruit thousands of years ago, and now there's some sort of vicarious curse applied to your life since birth. Just like how you stated, Alan, it demoralizes humanity. Those who say that we were never saved, just like I told Mike Sullivan, you'd have to judge me when I was a baby
Yeah.
because I was born and raised in this as a pew baby in church. My grandfather was a pastor. My father was a pastor. Here I am in Sunday school, little boy, singing songs and clapping to Jesus, crying. I mean, you're going to say that I was never, my goodness gracious. And it's that type of approach that gives a distaste from religion. But yes, we don't have to really look too far. We can look at history, look at the medieval times, look at what the Catholic Church did to humanity in the name of religion, in the name of Christianity. And we can go to all other religions as well, but we're living in a day and age where people can live a joyful, fulfilled life apart from Christianity, apart from religion. And if they really, really are sincere and they really want to know, well, why is it that ministers and people who are dedicated, why do they leave? I could go right to the Bible itself, and that is the problem, Alan, is that Christians aren't reading their Bibles. And they're not given an honest approach. There's emotion that's tied to this. There's an identity crisis that's tied to this, especially when you're born and raised in it. God, you're supposed to love God more than your own mother and father. It's like you have your mother and father as authorities, aunts, uncles, whatever, but God is above that. So once you start attacking God, then it's vicariously like attacking your mother and your father. It's hitting that same part of the brain, where it's like, whoa, you're touching on something that I'm supposed to be holding dear to, and it's that emotion that is tied to the Bible, tied to Christianity, tied to religion. That it takes time, as we know, Alan. It takes time to wash away that brainwash. But if you look at the Bible in a unbiased, logical, analytical approach, without a doubt, it will lead you right out of the Bible. And it's been doing that for hundreds of years. We're just now seeing it more because of technology. But skepticism, has been always been around. And now that I read more history, I see more skeptics that even existed even in the third century. One of them, a philosopher named Porphyry, who was known as a bitter enemy of the Christians. Even Augustine of Hippo wrote about him, and he was I mean,
Hey, bro, we're losing you again.
have much of a choice if you're under Catholic tyranny.
Hey, Tristan.
Am I
Uh, yeah, we're
stuck
losing you,
again?
man. I need you to go out and come back in again because you're frozen.
Goodness gracious. Okay.
All right, folks. So we're going to give him a chance. So I'll talk to you for just a second while we're waiting on Tristan to come back. Um, uh, the Unraveler show is officially launching next Sunday, March 2nd at 6:30 p.m. That's what's going to be on Sundays. And my first guest is going to be William Vincent. So very excited about that. Please go get his book, the 10 Myths of Atheism. Get my book, How to Kill God the Easy Way. Read them and join us for the show because that's what we're going to be discussing, our different views. They are quite in contrast with one another. So it's going to be quite a fun journey. So I encourage you to grab those. And also, if you are interested in asking questions or leaving comments or whatever for us to participate or engage with, just drop them in the live chat. And as I see them, I'll be checking periodically. We can discuss them. But Tristan, sorry, can you go back a little bit, maybe like 30 seconds?
Yeah, I forgot where I left off of, but yeah, we can see that there is a mass exodus of Christians now in our day and age, but it's been happening all throughout history. I was talking about a philosopher named Porphyry who existed in the third century. Even Augustine of Hippo attributed him as a bitter enemy of the Christians. And when I read his literature, Alan, he should have been living in our day, the way he was critiquing Christianity. So I do think that it is a brainwash, especially if you're born and raised in this. I mean, if you look at Muslims, for example, I mean, when I talk to a Muslim, and I, bring out errors of the Quran, they'll use the faith card. Once they've already determined, no matter what you say, I will still cling to it. Then that's what they're going to do. And I remember stating that, like, no matter where I venture out in my studies, no matter what type of skeptic books I read, I will never leave the faith. I will always use faith. Um, but that gets tiring after a while. You begin to see the fallacies in that, using that faith card as a cop out for reason, as a cop out for an unbiased approach. So that's where I'm at. I cannot use faith anymore. It's completely burnt out. And not only that, sorry, my phone's ringing. I cannot use faith to wait for a man upstairs who's sitting on a throne. Um, Waiting for this new heavens and this new earth, dangling over this promise of a new heavens and a new earth, while Christians are over here waiting for it. I mean, it's 2,000 years too long. So whether you're a full preterist and you believe that it's all fulfilled in 70 AD and evil is just going to perpetuate all throughout the human race, that's really bad. Talk about intelligent design. But then when you are saying, well, it's been 2,000 years while Christ is sitting on the throne, just dangling over this promise of a new heavens and a new earth while evil is happening to innocent victims, children, for thousands of years. How can we side with that? And so, you and I, Alan, we've had discussions before. If we had the power to stop evil happening to innocent victims, if we had the power to stop evil happening to children, would we wait 2,000 years or would we do it instantaneously? And I think any moral, ethical person would do it instantaneously. And it's amazing when you ask Christians this, that you want to talk about cognitive dissonance. When you ask a pastor, a scholar, a Christian, you're going to see 9 times out of 10 there is a reluctancy to that question. That if you had the power, If you are an omnipotent being, or if you had the natural ability to stop evil happening to children, would you wait 2,000 years to do it, or would you do it instantaneously? That right here, that right there hits the heart of the matter. It shows what religion does to the cognition of grown adults, and it shows that yes, it does demoralize humanity. Now, are there some good things that come out of Christianity, some good ethics? Sure, you get that from all other religions. But like Jen Fishburne has stated, and I love it when she states this, that she learned more from watching Netflix than she did from the Bible when it came to ethics and morals, and I'd have to concur to that.
Speaking of Jen Fishburne, I would just like to take a moment to give her a major shout out. She was influential in both of our lives for different reasons. From what I understand, she was somewhat influential in helping you escape Christianity, right?
Yes.
So that's quite cool. And then of course with me, I had already escaped, but I had been, in solitude, just in my own world. I didn't. Well, I mean, I was with my partner and stuff and her kids, but I had disconnected from the world entirely of religion and mostly the world at all. I was in such shock. I didn't want to I just loved my life for once, not having to go to church on Sundays and have to dialogue with people about this garbage and having the accusations, you just don't know the Bible, or that's your interpretation and all that stuff, which is really I'm gonna just recently had that discussion with somebody. Well, preterism's true because of the hermeneutics. I'm like, well, your hermeneutics, their hermeneutic, like, how do you objectively tell somebody, which hermeneutic is right when you're all disagreeing and you're all saying your hermeneutic's right? It's like, it's absurd, but somehow, my hermeneutic's right, but there always ends up being flaws, one of which you have recently pointed out regarding the resurrection, which blew my mind. I was really excited about that. So we'll return to that in just a second. But because you've explained one of the major moral issues with futurism, waiting
Yeah.
2,000 years, then suffering. But what about preterism, right? So we'll talk about that in a second. But back to Jen. For me, she came and she kind of found me in my little cave, and she was like one of the only ones that found me in my cave and was like, "Hey, maybe it's time for you to come out and talk to people and start sharing your thoughts with the world again." And I was like reluctant. I was like, "I could do an interview, sure, why not?" And then she asked me this really hard question: "What made you leave?" I don't know. For me, it didn't have a. I mean, there was an aha moment, but I couldn't explain you why that aha moment happened at the time. It took me some time to really comprehend what changed. Why all of a sudden did I just say, "What am I doing?" and no longer believe. And that's what my book's about. It helps me explaining how I got out and helping others get out the same way. But anyway, so thank you to Jen. Both of us have gratitude to you for what you've done, and also the show I do with her is really fun. It's a blast. I enjoy doing that every week. But anyway, so back to your thoughts. We have these issues. We have this moral conflict that futurists have. And you ask them that, and no, 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 they just want to close their ears, right? Like I saw the debate you did with Sam Frost, and I agree. I can see his point. I'm not a sovereign God. If you're going to ask me how a sovereign God could do this for so long, his answer is going to continue to be the same thing. Well, I'm not an infinite God. I can't understand everything. Okay, great. But you back down all the way to just you being you as a moral person, and you had the strength enough to do this. Would you do it? Well, I'm not a God and I can't. He refused to get off it because he knows the consequences of answering that question. So I thought that was great that you did that. You didn't keep pushing the same thing. You asked a totally different question, but it was just fell on deaf ears. And this is what we have to do. Um, so preterism. Now we're in preterism. We see the problems with futurism. Everything looks great. Even the timing of the resurrection all looks good, all works in my opinion. Like it fits the context of everything. Even when it comes to the metaphors, I think they work in Hebrew literature and everything. But then you get to the resurrection and you have this great thing that happens, which is essentially nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Literally nothing but, oh, spiritual blessings. So now you not only have to have faith God exists, but you actually have to have faith that this God is giving you spiritual blessings through this spiritual thing called the resurrection, which you also have to have faith in. And the whole 9 yards comes down to faith. And at some point, we're kind of like what you were saying. You kind of look around, it gets wearisome. You're like, I can't live by faith anymore. This isn't working for me because everything's just guesswork.
Yeah. Yeah.
So So why don't you share your thoughts on the resurrection for the people that are listening? Because I have no doubt we have some viewers just sitting here. on the edge of their seat waiting for you to talk about dancing in the streets. I know it's a big hot topic right now. So, just go ahead and talk about it and talk about the things that Don said because I think it's
Yeah.
fun. This is the channel to do it. Let's discuss it.
Yeah, and again, hopefully I don't know what happens with the connection. You know what I mean? I'm seeing myself great right now, so just let me know if, and I'll come back and I'll come back in. I don't know what's happening, but um, yeah, with that resurrection, I remember Alan, you and I spoke, and you had stated that if you had heard that like decades ago, that would have questioned your paradigm of full preterism, and that's exactly to the T. Why I left full preterism. I was following Don arduously. I was reading many of his books. I read over 10 of his books. I've watched every single morning musing series on the resurrection. And it's just a basic fundamental question. How did the saints experience this? Living hundreds of miles away from Jerusalem, this changed immortality in the twinkling of an eye and the meeting of Christ in the air with the dead that were in Hades. How did they experience this cognitively? In their conscious reality, living hundreds of miles away, not even knowing that the Roman soldiers are in Jerusalem. And like you said, Alan, this great grand finale, this day of redemption, what in the world took place? And it's essentially nothing, is what they're stating. In other words, it's nothing to see here. And this is why we ask, well, what happened? Did they feel any goosebumps when they changed immortality? Did they shake? Did they cry tears of joy? Something must have happened to the living saints physically because they were living, which means they were physical people, which means all of the laws of physics applies to them in their brain and their nervous system. It is just the most basic fundamental question that full preterists, many of them who've never even read Don's books, probably never even watched all of his morning musing series, want to downplay it. But it's the how question. We have who, what, when, where, how. We're just simply asking, how did they change? And what they state is, well, don't ask that. Just believe something took place in faith. There was one full preterist debater who debates and represents full preterism. He debates on a pretty a reputable channel, Standing for Truth. Don's debated on this channel. William Bell's debated on this channel. Dr. Kent Hovind, a scientist who debated on this channel. It's one of the best channels on YouTube. This full preterist stated that the saints experienced indigestion. And he's been getting a lot of flack for that. And he meant it like jokingly, but that's exactly to the T. And Sam Frost debated him, and Sam Frost, it was very embarrassing. In my opinion, it was Sam Frost's best debate of his entire ministry. And it just happened just like 3 months ago, I believe. But that experiential factor is so key because it was Don Preston who stated that if there was a physical catching away of the saints, if there was a physical meeting with Christ in heaven or the air, the spiritual realm, then Christianity ended in 70 AD. I believe it was his debate with David Hester because David Hester was seeing that as well. And this is why Don and another full preterist, Ed Stevens, are debating this. But I just don't understand why Don wouldn't just say, hey, if you believe in a physical rapture, you can still believe in Christianity or still believe the story applies to you. But he's not doing that because he's trapped, because he already publicly stated that if there was a physical rapture, which is obviously insane to believe, right, Alan? I mean, all these people just left and nobody heard about it, wrote about it. He had stated that, the conclusiveness of the Israel-only preterists, those who believe that it was only for the first century, that they would be correct, that Christianity ended in 70 AD. So something must have happened. And yes, Don did say in his debate with Richard Carrier that the saints, he said he was real sure, and anybody can go back. He said, I'm real sure that there were lots of tears of joy. I'm real sure that there was some dancing in the houses of the saints that were being persecuted, but now their oppressors are the persecuted. And then he states, were they dancing in the streets? Were they shedding tears? And he says, well, in a way, I think they probably did. End quote. And that right there is checkmate. That's what you call having a man cornered. So you have to imagine all the saints all throughout the world, Christians, thousands of Christians all throughout the world, all hundreds of miles away from Jerusalem. They're just dancing in the streets and in the houses. And when were they dancing? Oh, during the time period when the Roman soldiers entered into Jerusalem and started starving people to death, brought about a Holocaust event where women were cooking their children for 5 months of this doing during this time. Here's a time statement. What are the Christians doing during this time? Oh, they're out there dancing. Why? Because they're vindicated by society, because God's on their side. They got changed immortality and they met Christ in the air. So this is absolutely absurd. That should be enough for anybody to just stop and say, whoa, there's something wrong with this theology. Take a step back. But you got a little bit of people who are still trying to say, oh, they would be dancing in the streets. They would be because, they have the joy of the Lord, while at the same time their friends and their relatives are being brutally murdered. This is absolutely immoral. Just like you said, Alan, it demoralizes humanity. And this is a prime example of what religion does to the cognition of a grown adult.
It really does. And you know, all they are dancing for is a metaphorical thing, blessing you take by faith. Kind of. I know how Derek loves to use. I just want $1 million or whatever number he gives. I think it's a
Yeah.
million. And you just have to believe me, and you just take it on faith. I just want $1 million, and you can't prove that I didn't. So that's essentially what it is. Derek's just going to be dancing in the streets over his blessed metaphorical $1 million, which doesn't really do any good for him. But he's excited about it, and
Yeah.
that would be the only reason you would ever be excited about something like that is if you somehow knew it was real. But if you're just living by faith, nobody would actually do that. They would never do
Yeah.
that. Only in
Yeah.
this scenario, supposedly, do we get all excited about some vindication. But bro, I used to buy it. And the reason I used to buy it, and the reason I would have said the same thing, is because when you're in that matrix, everything is based on faith. And if God says it, it's true. Oh,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean you have a different opinion of what God says than I do, which is fine, but they're both true apparently, because if God said it, it's true. But regardless, you just take it on faith. I and what I get utterly frustrated about, and I don't want to change topics yet unless you're ready to, but I'll just throw this out there, and if you want to go with me, we can, or we can stay where we are. Um, is the whole idea of um, knowing that believing in God requires faith, and that's all you have to prove that God exists is entirely based on faith. That's all you have to prove a resurrection happened. It's all you have to prove that is there's blessings, spiritual blessings and whatnot. And when I say prove, I use that loosely. Um, but when it comes to trying to prove God in the apologetic world, they continuously try to resort to empirical data, and it's frustrating to me because you're sitting here and you're like, oh great. Right now I'm in a constant battle discussion with Don over that. Intelligent design supposedly proves the existence of God. I'm like, great, okay, good, let's talk about this. And I'm hoping he'll be willing to do a live debate with me, because I would love a lot of people to see this, and I think it's important that people of faith start to see what the flaw is. But when you're using empirical data like this, it'll take you so far to a point where it says, hey, even if I grant to you intelligent design, all it takes you to a point that says, hey, there's an intelligent designer. Great. Now go from there to Yahweh. Well, it must be Yahweh. That's all there is. No,
Yeah.
that's because you already believe in Yahweh, but that does
Right.
not, that is a complete illogical and unnecessary leap to go that far.
Right.
So essentially, you wasted our time, even taking me to the 50-yard line on the field. I needed 100, and you took me
Right.
halfway and then made me go the rest by faith. I could have gone the whole 100 by faith if that's what you want. That so trying to mix them together is like oil and water. It doesn't work. So you can either comment on that or take us back,
Yeah,
because
no, yeah, actually, I would love to comment on that, because, they have to prove that it's Yahweh, while the Muslims, they believe in intelligent design. They're saying that it's Allah. And even the Jews, they'll say that it's Yahweh, but the Christians believe in a Trinity, that it was the Son of God who created all the creation. So here you have this incoherent conflict of intelligent design, even amongst religious adherents. So here you'll have the Jews will say, no, Yahweh is the true creator. And the Christians should say that the Trinity is the true creator. Come, let us make man in our image. Now, I know there are Christians who reject the Trinity. I understand that. I was born and raised in a denomination that rejected the Trinity. But for the majority of Christians, whether Catholic or Protestants, the Trinity, the triune God, is the most widely accepted view. I would say even in the 90th percentile, mostly all Christians believe in the Trinity. Which you have the accusations of some sort of three-headed God, three persons in the Godhead. So you have
Harry
even
Potter.
the right. You have this conflict where you have Muslim and let's just stick with the Abrahamic religions. The Muslims are saying it's Allah. The Christians are saying it's the Trinity. three persons made this, or just one, and one gave the authority, whatever. And then the Jews are saying that it's solely Yahweh with one mind. And you would have to take that leap of faith. And so, yeah, even if you do prove that there's an intelligent designer, but then when I look at birth defects, when I look at those who are, born, mentally and physically handicapped, my heart just sinks. And I remember, Alan, being a little kid, asking my mother, and I remember that time asking my mother, why did God make them this way? And my mother does still this day. We don't know, because how is there any intelligence in that? And I hurt for those suffering children. And I just think, my goodness gracious, like, how in the world can you say that you're formed in your mother's womb beautifully in fashion? And yet here you are, God, having children by the millions suffer with birth defects. Terrible. What kind of intelligence is this? Oh, it's not God's fault, Ellen. It's humanity's fault, because they ate a fruit. One man ate a fruit 1,000 or 6,000 years ago, and that's why it cursed the biology of humanity. And that's why, because humanity has a choice. Amazing. Even though the baby doesn't have a choice, the baby doesn't have free will to be born this way. And so it's absolutely terrible, this teaching, this doctrine that Christians want to impose on the human race. I think it's absolutely repulsive.
Well, interestingly, um, when you become a preterist, you can no longer use that argument
Yeah.
because the garden didn't curse the physicality of things. It's just the spiritual, right? So once you're there, then you're like, I can't really blame God anymore for flawed DNA and flawed eyes and cancer cells and children dying. Like, you can't blame God man for that, because sin didn't cause that. That was always going to be there anyway. So that to me is frustrating, to try to kind of subtly go back and try to say, well, it's because man did wrong. No, your view teaches man didn't cause this, so you can't use that. Um, but I mean, I have an even greater problem with the ID argument. Trying to jump and leap to even any god. Like, oh well, there no, because right now I'm even granting Don. I'm like, look, I'll even grant you Yahweh's the only possible God if it's a God. You just prove it's a God, and I'll say it's Yahweh. It's great. Well, it has to be Yahweh then, because if he's better than the other God, then you've already granted. No, my cat could have been the great designer of Yahweh. You don't know that. I don't know that. My cat could be so freaking intelligent that he made Yahweh and then also made it in such a way that he could be reincarnated into a freaking cat. I mean, it's like you can't, there's no way you can say that you know that definitively that's not it. Does it sound silly? Sure. Would I actually believe that? No, because I have no belief and grounds for it. For the same reason I have no grounds to believe in Yahweh. So, it's just, I know that I know that I know God exists. No, God might exist. And I'm with you.
Yeah.
That's fine. He might exist, sure. But you don't know that you know that you know that you know. And if you can't say you know with 1,000%, and all you can give me is, well, you might be the reason, great. You've just granted me the case that I've been making this whole time. Don't live your life by some book of some God that you don't actually know with 100% certainty exists. That's not a good way to live. And if you're going to say, well, I use Pascal's wager, holy crap. Now you're not really thinking straight at all. Because if you're going to base your entire life based on a wager that something just might happen to
Might
be,
happen, right?
if you're going to live like that, let me throw you an alternative Pascal's wager. What if, by choosing to not believe in God and live the life of an atheist, if you choose God, you're going to suffer an even worse fate, because I know that being an atheist is the only right way. So therefore, you have to turn away from God, or you're going to suffer a worse fate. You don't
Wow.
do this. We don't know the answers to this. So to say I'm doing this just in case, well, I'm telling you, you should go my way just in case, because it's a lot worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no consistency in it at all, and it's very, very frustrating, man. And I used to be in it,
Yeah.
so I understand why you're keeping thinking like you are, because you just, I think deep down there's always this rut in there saying something's off, but we never take the time to entertain it, because the thought that we could possibly have lived a life like this without it being real, it just no, there's no way. I mean, back to your original way you started the show. We were in it, man. There was no question. I did not live my life like faking anything, man. I, in fact, I can't even believe some of these guys like David Curtis and Don Preston and even Michael Sullivan, these guys who I've journeyed with and walked with and talked with, and we've preached together, and they could possibly tell me that they didn't think I was genuine. Like, holy cow, dude! I mean, that just shocks me.
Yeah. Well, the sword cuts both ways. I tell them, well, you're not genuine. If I wasn't genuine, the majority of Christians that I see have never really dedicated themselves the way that you and I have, Alan. And so it's like it's not a boastful thing, but I ask Christians, well, how many souls have you won? How many prisons have you went and preached at? How many doors have you knocked on? How many days have you fasted? You should know them by their fruit. Faith without works is dead. And it's you look at someone's level of dedication and when they're accusing you of this. But at the end of the day, I pity those who are in religion, Alan. I really do.
I do too.
There's always a sense of pity, and if I talk to them, mostly like children for the most part, like students, even no matter what age they are, if they're religious adherents, because I understand that brainwash that you bring up. I understand there is a neurological, psychological structure that can't just be erased overnight. It takes time, it takes effort to scrub. And so, I do look at them and I do have a sense of pity for those who are, staunchly holding to religious faith versus somebody who's like, oh, yeah, I believe in God, or yeah, I believe in the Bible, but they've never read a single chapter of it. That's different. But those who are really dedicated to it, I do have a sense of pity. I have students that I see on a daily basis who are religious, and I'm hoping that one day that they could, live a life apart from religion because it is beautiful. It's liberating knowing that this book is not applied to you anymore and that you get to live your life how you want. So like I said before, it's men like us, Alan, that have been there and done that. And those who have been there and done that, we get to have a say, and we have a say. But it's what can we say? You're going to have those who have different motives why they're Christians. Some of them just want to sell books. Some of them like the prestige. Some of them like the social status. And so that may be one reason why they're still holding on to religion. They may see the arguments that we're presenting, Alan, but then it'll affect their paycheck. It'll affect their social standing. It'll affect their whole livelihood. So it becomes a survival instinct. And so it's like now I feel like I'm because I'm killing, but as you stated before, destroying faith. Listen, faith can be used to destroy so many others, and we've seen this. And that faith, I will absolutely love to destroy and kill. If somebody wants to use faith as a cop out for reason for just some sort of theological dialogue, that's one thing. But when somebody's oppressing other people's lives, taking from their bank accounts, controlling them, that's absolutely immoral. I absolutely love to terminate that faith because it is absolutely wicked, and we shouldn't have to explain why it's wicked. We shouldn't have to explain why it's unethical. Those are just foundational beliefs that we should just accept right at face value. That if you're oppressing somebody, you're hurting somebody in the name of religion, that's absolutely wicked and immoral. And I don't have to explain where my morals came from or where my ethics come from, because they definitely didn't come from Christianity. So that's my take on that.
So this is a good segue point because I have a point about that, and then continue on another thought with that. So, um, so there are those that you were talking about are really invested in, and so destroying their faith, so to speak, it's we're genuinely trying to help them. We genuinely
Yeah,
care because they're stuck into living a way that I think were they to find out they would regret like I did for a while, and it's taken me some time. As I praise Jen earlier, I'll praise her again. One of the things she helped me realize, others have too, but probably her more than anyone. Um, Actually, my cousin Ben also. I don't know if he'll ever watch this, but he had a huge influence in my life regarding this thought. I would not be able to do what I'm doing now had I not been this invested for 40 years.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
because of that, I feel like I have a voice because of that and because of my journey, and especially with all you full preterists that are trying to, oh, Alan, you know what you're talking about yet. You haven't, you know, Hitchens. I'm like, I'm not trying to be Hitch. I don't, I'll tell you this, Hitchens is no me because I ventured into full preterism and I consider that a very intelligent move. So, don't act like I have nothing to offer here because I'm no Hitchens. I don't, and I'm not that I'm trying to compare myself with him or anybody else. We're just all different. But here I am, here you are. We journeyed in this for many years. You know that we have the mind to be able to engage with you. So I think those are cop-out statements to
Yes.
try to ignore us because they know that they're going to have to answer some serious questions. So that's the one side of the person that we're trying to help. There's the other side, the person who doesn't really read and they just go to church and it's just a social thing for them and they don't really care. Um, I'm very concerned for them too, for a couple of reasons. Number one, I don't think they're educated enough, and I don't mean because they're dumb, but because they just don't study it or read or nobody's teaching them what the Bible actually teaches. Um, and I don't think they're educated enough to realize that they are supporting a religion and a God that endorses rape, slavery, and murder
Mm,
and the harming of children. And if I were one of those people and I found out that I was deceived and I've been supporting this and I just wasn't educated in it because they kept it from me, I'd be pissed, bro. I
mm,
want all my money back. I'd want to
yeah.
shut it down immediately. And that's partly why I care to help those people too, because I think they're being tricked into thinking, oh, this is just about fellowship. Um, Number one, you don't need Jesus to have fellowship. You actually can do it. I see it happen all the time with concerts, Tony Robbins,
Yeah.
gathering stuff. You know, they may not happen as regularly as Christianity, as church meeting, of course, but that's because we're continuing to support the system. I absolutely believe as theism dies, humanism will rise. And I think that we will once again be able to gather like that and do those same things with people like us, like Tony Robbins, like whoever, even the preachers that can now deconvert freely without feeling like they're going to lose their careers, continue to do the same thing they're doing, but just teach great life, great moral
Yeah.
living. It
Yeah.
does. You can even use the Bible. That's what's fun about it. Like I have no problem preaching a text from the Bible. I have no problem, and saying this book's not true, but there's this one little chapter in here I thought was really fascinating. I'd like to
Yeah.
talk like doing it in a way that doesn't trick people into thinking God's real or that some savior's there or that you're some sinner worthy of nothing. Say this is fun. This is what and you can do it from the Quran or whatever book you want to, or just don't even use a book. Just do what Tony does. See, so we can have this and we can have it regularly, but it's never going to happen as long as we continue to support the system. And I think the uneducated are going to continue to support the system because they don't know
Yeah.
any, they don't
They don't
realize
know any better.
what's happening. So that
Yep.
concerns me too. Um,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that?
Hey, just to use a Bible verse, my people perish for a lack of knowledge, and that's, I mean, yeah, of course, there's ethics and morals that are good for us today that we can find from the Bible. Look, I could pull up a proverb that may have some relevance for us, right? I could pull up a Chinese proverb.
Yeah.
You could pull up any other ethnic religion that we can see here and glean some sort of moral principle. That's
In fact,
fine.
you could have Chinese food every week for our potluck and open the what do you call that again?
Yeah.
The fortune cookie, and the pastor could just preach right off of that, dude. That'd be dope.
I've heard of stories where people said, "Oh, God spoke to me. I went to the Chinese. I opened up the Chinese fortune cookie, and it would just went. And God speaks and works in mysterious ways. I mean, I've heard it all. Born and raised in this. You go, wow. Well, God do that? Yeah, He can. It's just a little obscure, but it is the lack of insight. And those who are born and raised in it, I feel, especially when you're a child, when you're most gullible, when you're most impressionable, you start making life decisions when you're 5 years old that I'm going to always believe in God. I'm going to always love God. So when I am speaking to a grown adult, that's the first thing I look at. Were you born and raised in this? And if they were, then you're holding on to a Santa Claus theory. That's essentially what I'm looking at when I look at them. Like you're still putting your faith in Santa Claus. That Santa Claus is real. It's pretty much neurologically the same thing, psychologically the same thing. The only difference is that you have a book that's attached to it that is, looks very holy, especially the King James, all the these and the thous and all that. It's like some sort of majestic, it really gets into the neuropsychology of the human brain. And when it's planted when you're a child, it's very difficult just to scrub that away for some. And I don't want to quote from Adolf Hitler, but he did make a pretty profound quote. Adolf Hitler stated, "If you give me a child until he is 8 years old, I'll have him for the rest of his life."
Mm.
That there is so much truth to that, even at 8 years old. And when you're bringing them Sunday, teaching them Sunday school, and they're just there listening to it, absorbing this like a sponge. And then if you have like a charismatic movement, you have music that's attached to it. You see people who you love, grown adults, dancing, looking at this thinking, wow, there must be something. I mean, because look at how emotional they are. And you're just taught that this is the way to go. And, you have altar calls. Come to the altar and give your life over to, and you raise your hands, and it's an emotional experience that you feel that you have an encounter with the divine, and that nothing could ever take that away from you. But then when you do study this, the science of this, the epistemology of these religious experiences, I'm pretty much convinced that it is something that's just your own brain working out. It's like having a dream. Your brain operates the same way as it does when you're awake. Your brain is the one that created the nightmare. You go, oh my goodness, I had this terrible nightmare. Well, who did that? Was that you, or was that your brain? And it's like, well, I kind of wasn't me, but it was my brain. Well, your brain is you. You see, your brain is very powerful, and it could deceive you. Your own brain can deceive you. So I'm just somebody who looks at these religious experiences, looks at these grown adults who are holding on to religious faith, and I just simply value the truth. Now, here's a question, Alan: why do we value the truth? What is it about the truth that humanity values so much? That's to be determined. But at the end of the day, I do know that the truth matters, and I could say with confidence that this Bible does not apply to humanity for us today. And I can hang my hat that that is true.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with you. You don't need to know what is wrong with your car to know what isn't. Um, there are plenty of parts in my car that I can say are not causing my engine to stop every time I start to drive. It has nothing to do with the door handle, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, so once you're out of this and you can look at it from a fresh lens, you can say, I know I may not know the answer. I may not know where we all came from, but I can certainly tell you that ain't it.
Yes. Yes.
So that's just a real statement because and once you recognize it, it's just dude, I love watching people when they first come out, like seeing the light bulb go on, and they're just like, what? Like deer in the headlights, you know what I mean? Like that moment
uh,
when you cross the line, you're just like, what did I just come out of? Right? It's
yeah.
crazy. It's so absolutely crazy. Um, So I had another thought, and I'll talk about it in a second. I'm gonna go use the restroom real quick. I'm gonna pause my camera. Can you take a second and talk about your channel and some of the things that you're doing so that people can
Yeah. Of
see
course.
and so again, do that.
Of
If
course.
I
Thank
have,
you.
I think you have the ability to screen share too, if you wanted to or whatever. But go ahead and do that, man. Whatever you
Okay.
want.
Thank you, Alan. I appreciate it. Those of you that are watching, I want to be able to serve the preterist community, those in the preterist perspectives Facebook group. Preterism, or if you're new to preterism, go on Facebook and go to Preterist Perspectives, Discussions, and Debate. You're going to see a wonderful range of admin that are there of different views. We have admins who oversee the group who are full preterists. Some of them are futurist Christians. Some of them are skeptics. Some of them are atheists. It's a well balanced admin group. And this is a place where you can gain information. It's a place where you can let your voice be heard. And so I would like to have those who are interested in making their voice heard, appear on my podcast. My podcast is 21st Century Mind. And I've had a few debates. I've hosted a few discussions. Jen Fishburne is going to be coming on soon, within a week. And then I also have Daniel Rogers and Lance Conley. I even had Sam Frost. So those who are voices in this movement, and those who want to be a voice, those who want to have maybe a debate or a live discussion, please, find me on Facebook, message me. Tristan Gabriel is my first and last name. I understand I have two first names. But Tristan Gabriel is my first and my last name. You could also email me at tristangabe21@gmail.com. And if you'd like to appear on my podcast, even if you like to challenge me, I'm all up for it. I eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff. And so Alan and I, we connected through the preterist community. And so those of you who maybe new to full preterism, or those of you guys who want more insight on preterism, please go to Preterist Perspectives, Discussions, and Debate on Facebook, and you'll see a wide range of information that it has changed my life and many others who have come on this Facebook group, where you get to see behind the scenes what is happening with these voices of full preterism. Even Don, those of you guys that want to see what's happening behind closed doors on a daily basis, Don has tough skin. I admire this man. He's been at this for a long time, Alan. Yes, we disagree with him, Alan, but my goodness, look at what he did. He took the most controversial view of eschatology, and he at least brought it to a world-class level. You have to give the man respect for that. He debated Michael Brown. I didn't have my fingerprints on that one, but my fingerprints are on the Richard Carrier debate. As a matter of fact, it was Derek who stated, "Hey, you made it come true. It's your debate. I own that. I have legal rights to it. It's mine. I paid for it." No, but I'm just saying that I respect Don, even though I disagree with him. This man debates. It's hard to even find a Christian, a pastor, to get up there and debate anybody. And that was one of the reasons why I started following him. I go, look, he's up and debating. That's great. That just gained so much respect
Yeah,
to
man.
me. So I wish Don nothing but the best. This is all theology business. And, I wish him nothing but the best for his ministry and his family.
I agree totally. Don is a really, really respectable gentleman. Like
Yes.
when it comes to debate, he's going to come at you,
Yeah.
and we're going to come at him. But when it comes to after the debate, go out for beer or whatever, we just or he doesn't drink. I don't know if you do. You guys can drink coffee. I'll have a beer. Um, Whatever. But the point is, yeah, he's really like that. Like he's just real kind-hearted Southern gentleman type of person. So I have a lot of respect for him as well. In fact, when I first came out of preterism and came out live and discussed all my reasons for being an atheist, he was one of the only ones actually that when he gave a public response, he did it in a very gentle and kind way. He didn't bash me. He didn't say anything negative. He didn't try to um, tell everybody the reason I became an atheist. Like he let me speak for myself, and he just said this is an issue for this and blah blah blah, and he just moved on. The others had to bash me and say all kinds of things about me, dig up stuff from my past, do a smear campaign, and I was just like, seriously, like I don't have a right to say what I think without having being smeared. But he did, so I have a lot of respect for him. I really, really do. He's a great guy. So anyway, so speaking of Don, speaking of views and stuff, what is so? Let's talk about views, where we come from, things like that. Just because I think it's fun to speculate. Um, the one thing I'm going to say right out the gate is I don't know that I know that I know that I know. I don't have any definitive answers as to why we're here, but I know that um, without God being the answer, without Yahweh being the answer for Christians or even Muslims, without their Islam, without their God being the God, whatever, Allah, uh, the whole they need to know what is the answer then. If it's not Yahweh, what is the answer? You have to have an answer. I'm like, well, only answer I can give you is I might think this is true. This is quite possibly true, and it's rooted in data or facts or evidence that we do have that suggest that would be true based on the fact that everything else here is true. So it's a very good possibility. Can we prove that it is? Well, no, we can't prove that it is 100%. So we just rest ourselves on all the information that we have up to this point without making definitive declarative statements that we can 100% know. As I said with the ID argument, it doesn't take you all the way. It simply points to a possibility that God is the answer. Sure, he might be, but might is not strong enough for me when you have no other evidential reasons to think that that's the case. So when I say that, um, I I will grant the apologist all of the factors involved in intelligent design. I'll even say, let's just grant the fact that there's an intelligent designer. I'll give you that, so you don't have to prove it. I'll grant that it's, that this intelligent designer made the DNA, whatever that's supposedly so great. And I'll even grant that if it is a God at the end, that God has to be Yahweh. I'll grant all that. But again, like I said earlier, you're taking this continuous leap and everything. But I think even granting that it's a problem, but I would not, if I were genuinely going to have a discussion where somebody was to try to say intelligent design is absolutely an absolute way to prove God, well, I'm going to take you back and I'm going to be like, all right, let me just rip up intelligent design to begin with, because I think there's plenty of flaws. As you were explaining earlier, so many flaws in the system seem to show more randomness than they do design, which is a real problem for me. But, to the opposite, let's just entertain it for fun. Dustin and I did that on our last show or a couple shows ago, and it's just fun. It's just fun to throw ideas around. But I just wanted to say up front, Tristan and I are not saying by our thoughts here that we know 100% certain, and that therefore Yahweh's wrong. No, we're just saying this is a fun conversation. Before I do though, Tristan, we have a question that came
Okay.
through. Tristan, do you ever take a day off?
I don't take a day off. I don't. I don't take a day off. There's not one day I can't think of a day where I take off and not do absolutely nothing like by myself. I mean, no, I haven't taken one in a long time. I do have vacations. I have times where I escape for a little bit. So if that's a day off, then yes. But I definitely don't take a day off of this Bible business. Even when I'm out, I could be out with a friend or whatever. We out, I still have that Bible filter. It's just my whole life is embedded in this Bible theology. But I am a full time educator. Every hour, counts. I got papers to grade. I got parents to meet with. Faculty, staff to deal with. I tutor as well. But every hour of the day counts. So yeah, I do take some time off. I do have some vacations. So, but as far as do I take a day where I do absolutely nothing and just watch Netflix by myself? No, I don't do that. I don't know. I haven't done that in a long, long time.
Well, there you go. And that's good because I was once told as a pastor, when I wanted to take Sundays off, son, the devil doesn't take a day off.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Okay.
got that in my head too. Yeah, I got
And I
it.
want to be like the devil. Okay, good, great.
Yeah.
All right, so beginnings. And unless something major pops up as we're talking, we can make this our last conversation because this is just a fun way to end. Do you want to start sharing your thoughts on it, or do you want me to start sharing my thoughts on it?
Go ahead. Go ahead, by all
Right.
means.
So for me, it makes the most sense that energy is the cause of everything. Um, Even with the data we know about black energy and how when it reaches entropy, it becomes black energy, and we know that it's becoming black faster and faster, and so it's evolving, and there's those kinds of speeds. So people have tried to say, well, then therefore, the universe couldn't have just been the universe with energy because we're moving too fast for that to be possible. But what the um, the possibility is that literally solves that problem and very likely could be the answer is energy ever evolving within a multiverse. Because if you have a multiverse, then you can have tunnels and you can have black voids and things that pass the energy from one to the other that are polar opposites to one another,
Yeah.
which weaken that energy again and resolve the problem on the other side of the pole. So I mean, can we prove that there's a multiverse at this point? No, but there's a lot of great theories on it. Well, I wouldn't. You can't really call them theories until it has a little bit more data. Um, but we're almost to that point. But definitely energy is a provable theory. Gravity is a provable theory. The universe existing is a provable theory. Even black energy is a provable theory. Even the fact that they can fix each other if you have polar opposites is a provable theory. Multiverse, not yet, but boy, does that make sense. I'm just saying, like, it just makes sense. And I'm like, I don't see any reason to look for a God to start all this when all of that just works and it makes sense. The Big Bang, of course, makes sense, but it would be a series of Big Bangs for all eternity because you would just always be doing it in multiverses. So this is the one we live in, and this one's very cool, and this is the way it works for us. But uh, but that is definitely a good answer because you don't it doesn't require a designer. If you're going to require a designer, then the question's always going to be, then how do you know Yahweh wasn't designed by a designer? Um,
Yeah.
you're going to have the infinite regress. And
Infinite regress. That's right.
well, it has to end at some point. Okay, fine, it has to end at some point. But why do you make that point Yahweh? Like, on what grounds can you just declare, well, Yahweh's that point? Well, how do you know? I might think it's Goering's, or
Yeah.
like I said,
Yeah.
or Cat.
And
I mean,
and and that's where faith gets pulled in. You gotta
right.
just believe in faith, and
Right.
you know,
And
it
again, I love the speculate. If you want to speculate, oh, what if it's a God? And what if this God is named Yahweh? And what if he reads this book? And what if this is all possible? And then and you want to speculate and have fun. Okay. But
Yeah.
when you start getting into, I know this 100%, I'll bank my life on it. Uh, that's where
Yeah.
it becomes off to me and concerning.
Yeah.
All right, your turn.
No, I like to make it practical. I say, okay, I grant it. Let's say it's Yahweh. I grant it. Let's say it's the Trinity, Jesus exists. Let's just grant it for the sake of a counter. Here you have Yahweh, killing babies. He killed David's illegitimate child when David had an affair with Bathsheba. He killed this baby. It says that the Lord struck the child on 2 Samuel chapter 6. He struck the child with an illness and died on the seventh day. So he didn't even get circumcised. So you have God who's officially, Yahweh, officially a baby killer. I wonder how the abortionists would feel about that, if they even know that that's even in the Bible. And then you have, these terrible acts of Yahweh, killing Uzzah for touching the Ark of the Covenant. And yet you have Yahweh just allowing all this evil to exist. So for me, when it comes to causation and emergence theories, yes, I mean, the Bible does not explain this. Here, Christians are over here trying to talk about the origin of species, the origin of the universe. How come Paul didn't talk about this? How come Moses? How come nobody further elucidated this? Why did it have to be thousands of years for these theories to finally erupt? So I allow it, Alan. I say, okay, this is why I choose anti-theism. And just like yourself, like I grant it. Okay, let's just say if Yahweh is the intelligent designer, Yahweh is the one who orchestrated this. He's the prime mover of all of this. What in the world is he allowing this to take place? How come he's not intervening? And it's that practicality that should, make people say, hey, I don't know if I could side with Yahweh, even if I granted that Yahweh is the intelligent designer. I still have that freedom of choice. I hope to believe that I will not side with Yahweh. I cannot side with that mind that when I read in the Bible has done certain things, or I look around in the world and I don't see any type of divine intervention, any type of, it appears to be that God is just a deistic point of view, just out there, not intervening. Somebody goes, oh, how do you know that? How do you know God's not doing anything? Well, he's not doing anything enough. That's why there's a lot of skeptics and atheists in different religions. If God wanted to, he could make himself well known, himself or itself or herself, however it is. This divine being can make itself known, but rather we have to know this God through the medium of a book that's written from 40 different authors, of a span of 1,000 years in Greek and Hebrew. And the fact that you have to go back and pull up the Greek, the fact that you have to pull up the Hebrew just shows that it was never intended to be written for us here in America, us English speakers. That's just proof positive right there. You have to get into a whole different mode of time and space. You got to get into a whole different mode of how the Hebrews thought thousands of years ago. That just proof positive right there. It was not for us. This is a product of human anthropology. This is not any product of divine intelligence or ordination. So if we took out the Bible, humanity would still probably be believing that the sun is a deity or the moon is a deity, just like our ancestors, so it's an indoctrination, but yes, the emergence and the causations of the physical world, listen, it's a theory. We get it. The theory of evolution, it's a theory. We get it. But the Bible isn't explaining anything in detail. How come Paul didn't explain this? And I often ask Christians, look, wouldn't it be nice if we had something inspired? This is all just your subjective personal commentary. You want to say that God created the heavens and the earth from Genesis 1 through 2 through 3, you're going to hang your hat on that. I mean, my goodness gracious, yet it doesn't talk about why animals are eating each other. It doesn't talk about, just like how we talked about before, birth defects and deformities. This is absolutely ridiculous. And if I had one weapon towards intelligent design, it absolutely would be children who are born with birth defects. That is absolutely terrible. And I believe if you bring that up with any Christian, you're going to see that there is a weakness in this argument. And there's a scholar by the name of Amos Young. He's a Pentecostal scholar, and he's pretty well known. He focuses on this birth defects, and it's not an easy topic because you either have to say that God is 100% responsible for birth defects, which, by the way, Yahweh did state this at Exodus 4:11. He stated that he made the blind, the dumb, and the crippled. And he told Moses to put his hand in his cloth, and it came out, and it was leprosy. He told him to put it back in. It came out as it was whole, brand new. So out of all the religious figures, Alan, Yahweh is the one who's writing his signature, stating, I am the one who made these birth defects. And therefore I can't side with that. So if Yahweh is that intelligent designer, I cannot side with Yahweh, who's making birth defects for suffering children. And I will gladly, and I've stated this before, even in my debate with Stan Frost, and I will hold this until my dying day, that I will gladly go to hell and burn in hell and baptize me in eternal fire than for me to ever side with any mind, whether it's Zeus, whether it's Allah, Yahweh. I'm not going to side with any mind that's going to just allow and intricately form birth defects upon innocent babies, victims. And to me, I will never side with that.
Bro, I couldn't have said it better. I totally agree with you, 100%. And it is mind-boggling to see all the dancing and moving around and squirming when these thoughts are brought up. Well, no, there's a reason. It's because God wanted to resolve it in the new covenant. And then so you end up having this issue where it's all just God was just using it to point to types and as types and shadows to point to reality. And I'm just like, okay, even if that's true, you're telling
Right.
me that there is a God and your God, and there was one point in history in some economy just to make a point. He decided for thousands and thousands of years to do this garbage. Really? To real human beings who have to suffer like this is what he needed. This is the best plan he could come up with. Well, I don't know. I'm not sovereign. I'm not eternal. I'm not God. No, you're not. You're better than God. That's the point.
Oh man, that's it right there.
It's absolutely crazy. So I'm with you. I would never bow to any of this God, and I want everybody else to see it too. And the irony, hey, so I get in these discussions. I got a guy right now. I don't know. I just never met him before. Just recently in the new group that I'm in with you, um, preterist discussions and debates. I think it is.
Yeah.
Um, so it's the whole you just you need to repent and believe in God. And I was like, why? Why should I just take God at His word? Well, and this is a response essentially. Well, I've had experiences and I've had visions and things happen, and I know that Satan's real, and I've had blah blah blah. So you need to turn and trust in God and just take Him at His word. And I was like, no, you're not asking me to take Him at His word. You're asking me to take Him at your word, because
Yeah.
you had all these experiences because you know Satan exists. That therefore I have to also somehow find a way to muster up that faith in me and just believe something I actually don't. Like how does that happen? Like I don't think you guys realize out there that when you tell people like Tristan and I that we need to just repent and believe in God and just turn by faith, you're asking us to do something that we're incapable of doing, because if you don't believe something to be true, you can't have faith in it. Like
Yeah.
it just doesn't, you can't muster that up. That'd be fake. And your God would see right through it anyway, like as if we can trick him to get us into heaven. Well, I believe in you, God, when we really don't. Like that doesn't make any sense. But I mean, I told him, I was like, bro, I'll even take Satan. Just give me some evidence that Satan exists. And if you can put in a good word for me and ask Satan to come appear to me, I'll believe in God too. That sounds great. I still won't bow the knee to him. I'll still give him the middle finger and be like, I don't want anything to do with you. But but at least I'd bow the knee. I mean, at least I'd believe that he exists. I'd be like,
Yeah.
oh, and I'd be doing the same thing I'm doing here, except I'd be saying God exists, but I can't stand him. So let's talk about all the reasons why everybody should rebel against him.
Yeah. I like to throw Christians off, and I mean it with all honesty. Um, can you see me? Am I here? Because you're stuck.
Um, I can see you fine.
Okay, perfect. Okay, perfect. I just because I know we had some internet connections before the past troubles in the past,
But
but
if I'm frozen for
I
you,
like
you'd be frozen live as well. So how are we looking now?
I'm fine. You're fine right now. I'm fine too. Okay. I like to throw Christians off, and I mean this with all honesty. If Satan does exist, I'm Satan's enemy. Because if Satan is the one that's orchestrating all this evil and he's whispering in the ears of adults to go and rape women and molest children and do all this evil, I'm against Satan. I would confront Satan and I would try to fight him if Satan ever appeared to me. So you and I, we have a common enemy, and you're going to try to tell me that I'm on Satan's side, and that throws off the Christians because hey, I'm not for Satan either. So like I said before, it's like believing in Santa Claus. It's like believing in Harry Potter or something like that. And I do have pity for grown adults who are deeply embedded in religion. It would be no different if I was talking to like another primate, like if there was a primate, an ape, or something like that, another kind of humanoid, whatever, and they were able to have a language. They were able to have, a cognitive faculties where they can, be like a human. It would be no different. I look at this as a delusion, essentially, that you and I are believing. It's essentially delusion. A guy um, at that, oh, he goes, yeah, it's delusion. I believe it's delusion. Religion is something that is the God delusion, right? With what Richard Dawkins had wrote. And those, it's amazing how, it was those books that as a Christian I wanted to read. I wanted to read Christopher Hitchens. I wanted to read Bertrand Russell, and all the rest of them, Richard Dawkins. And look, we flashed, and 15 years later, and hey, you know what? They were right. So I'm appreciative of those critical scholars. I'm appreciative of what they're doing to humanity. And it may be 15 years, 20 years from now, Alan, when you will see the fruit of your labor. When someone comes to you and says, you know what, I read your book, and you know what, you're right. That's how powerful this religious business is, that it takes 10, 15, 20 plus years, decades, for somebody to finally be honest, for somebody to finally look at something unbiasedly, and then it is what it is. So I'm hoping that that process is faster, and that's why I think these dialogues that we have, that speeds up that process. That engagement that we're having, it's speeding up that process for somebody to be delivered from religion, and live their life. And so that way, when you die, I have a clear conscience. I never one time had an impure motive. I never had a selfish motive with this. As a matter of fact, there are many times, Alan, I think about just putting this Bible business down and just living my life how I want to live my life, and never talk about the Bible again. But I just can't do it. It's just so deeply embedded in me. So I
Now
guess
that
until the day I die.
that is a. I'm sorry, we got to talk about this, man, because you just opened another can of worms. Um, so so what is your reason to have any sort of drive to do anything good at all as an atheist? Well, you're not an atheist, but as a person who doesn't believe that there's an objective standard named Yahweh, right? Can I at least say that?
Yeah.
Okay. So without
Yeah.
without some transcendent standard of this God, how do you possibly not go out and live it up and cook babies for dinner and you know whatever, I don't know, do all the evil things out there that you could do? Like, Tristan, I don't understand how it's possible for you to be a good person without an objective standard. Explain this to me. What is
Yeah,
driving
I
you?
mean, because of society, what society taught us. Society has taught us things, what to do, what not to do. If I was born in a different time, like let's say ancient Native Americans, I probably would be going out and scalping people, and doing things that would be, these morals and ethics in the 21st century. It's built upon society. It's built upon language. Morals and ethics are built upon language. I love what Wittgenstein, who was the student of Bertrand Russell, he's one of the greatest philosopher in the 20th century. He's been attributed with language and mental imagery. All of our morals and our ethics, if we did not have a language, we'd be just like the animals. And there would be no accountability for the good or the evil that you would do. So that's really, if I had to reduce it down to something. But how can I be good without God? Well, just like Jen Fishburne had stated, I learned goodness watching Netflix. I learned about doing good unto others being in preschool. Even a secular paradigm. And we see in secular countries that don't have religion, there's not a lot of crime happening there. If you go out in some regions in Europe, there's secular countries that are not religious. How come they're not over here, raping and stealing and murdering people by mass numbers? It's like I said before, society has taught us, what is good and what's evil. And I understand that there's conflicts in that statement. There are governments that teach racism. There are governments that teach this, that teach other religious beliefs, and it's conflicting. So that's my answer. Hey, I've learned what was good and what's evil in the secular worldview. So yeah, I mean, I guess I'm formed by my social ontology, I guess.
Yeah, well, and what it boils down to then, at the end of the day, isn't it you as an individual that chooses what it is you want your standard to be. How you are going to live is based on which set of morals in whatever group of people you live with that you're willing to abide by, right? I mean, this is
Yeah.
your choice. You go live on some island on your own, make up your own damn rules, and do whatever you want.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's like, and what Christians don't realize, and they always want to press this. Well, they're no, God's the transcendent standard, and the only reason you are living the way you are is because look, the only reason you believe God's a transcendent standard, and the only reason you're willing to live by that transcendent standard is because you decided that you like
Right.
him as your transcendent standard. Yes.
Yeah.
And I decided I don't anymore. And it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
So God is
Yeah.
not some transcendent standard because he decided it. No, it's because you decided it. That's
Right.
what.
Right.
You don't
Good
need
stuff.
in fact, the reason you live the way you do as a Christian is because you like a lot of the good things that God does do because you ignore all of the bad things that he
All the
does.
bad,
And so
right?
you just basically are living by whatever you like about God, which is essentially how you want to live, not how God tells you to live.
Yeah.
It's yeah, it's crazy. So anyway, to wrap up, I guess, unless there was anything else you wanted to
No, not at all.
so like I said, this is my first time doing a YouTube live, so hopefully I can figure out how to end this all and put the links that we talked about in the bottom. If not, I'll have Tristan or somebody help me out, but we'll get it done. I'm sure it'll be all right. So I'll put all that there. And don't forget next Sunday at 6:30, live with me and William Vincent. Make sure you get the books. You're going to really enjoy them, and give us a chance to dialogue about it. It's going to be a fun series of discussions, me and against a Christian. I'm looking forward to that. But he's a really gracious guy, so we can actually have conversation, and I like that.
Nice.
All
I'm
right,
looking forward to that. That's going to be great.
it's gonna be fun. And Tristan, we're gonna bring you on to the Birds of a Feather podcast at some point here for one of our roundtables. So I'm excited about that. Don't know which date
Cool.
yet on that. And someday I'll have you back here as well. But the link to the Birds of a Feather with Dustin and I will have that in the notes as well that follow here. So. All right, everybody. Tristan, thank you so much for being a part of this and
Thank
for
you.
talking with me for as long as you did. This was awesome. Boy, we covered a lot of ground today, didn't we?
We did. We barely scratched the surface.
Barely scratched the surface, but man, we'll do it again sometime when I have a week that's open. So it'll be a lot of fun. And just to remind everybody, there is no one like Yahweh, and I mean no one like Yahweh. So have a great day, everybody. Thanks for being part of this. Good night.
Thank you.